Logan Grant grunted as he adjusted the weight of the last moving box in his arms, sweat trickling down his neck as the summer sun beat down on the sidewalk. His 5-year-old daughter, Riley, sat cross-legged on the apartment steps behind him, her pink backpack resting beside her and a half-eaten lollipop clutched in her hand. "You good, Daddy?" she asked, tilting her head. "Yeah, baby girl," Logan replied, giving her a tired smile. "Just helping this lady with her stuff. Then we'll go to the park, like I promised." He turned back toward the sleek black SUV parked in front of the building. The woman waiting there didn't look like she belonged in this neighborhood. Her heels were too high, her sunglasses too expensive, and her posture too polished. She stood by the open trunk, looking mildly annoyed at the chaos of cardboard and tangled lamps. Logan had seen her struggling to carry a box earlier, and his instincts kicked in. Helping people was second nature, especially when they looked like they hadn't lifted anything heavier than a laptop in their lives. "You don't have to do all of it," the woman said, crossing her arms. Her voice was firm, but there was a flicker of amusement in it. "I'm almost done," Logan said, placing the last box in the trunk. "You'd hurt your back if you tried to lift this one, trust me," she laughed. "Are you always this heroic with strangers?" "Nah," he said, brushing off his hands. "Just figured you looked like you needed a hand." She studied him for a moment, then took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, but something softened in them as she looked at him and then glanced at Riley on the steps. "You live around here?" "Yeah, building down the block." "Top floor," he paused. "It's not much, but it's home." The woman looked like she was about to say something else but stopped herself. Instead, she extended her hand. "Nora Sullivan." Logan took it, his grip firm, roughened from long days of labor work. "Logan." "That's my daughter, Riley." "Hi," Riley shouted, waving. Nora's smile widened. "Hi, Riley." Then to Logan, "Thanks for helping. I was, honestly, overwhelmed." "No problem," Logan said. "You moving in or just dropping stuff off?" "My friend's place. She needed a few things from my storage unit." "I owed her a favor," Logan nodded. "Well, if you ever need a hand again, I'm usually around, either working odd jobs or hanging out with Riley." Nora hesitated. "You do moving work professionally?" "Not really. I pick up what I can, construction, repairs, delivery gigs." "It's hard to keep it steady with a kid." She glanced at Riley again, then back at him. "She's lucky to have a dad like you." He gave a small chuckle. "I'm lucky to have her." Nora hesitated one more moment as if debating something. "Do you do handyman stuff too?" "Yeah. Fixing things, hauling stuff if I can do it, I will." "Would you be open to a job?" she asked. "I have a property that needs some work, nothing too crazy, just a few things here and there." Logan blinked. "Sure, if it's not too far." "It's not. I'll give you the address." "Tomorrow morning." "Yeah, I'll need to drop Riley off at her preschool, but after that, I'm free." "Perfect." As Nora got into her SUV, Logan lifted Riley into his arms and gave her a kiss on the cheek. She giggled and clung to his neck. "Is she a princess?" Riley asked, watching the SUV pull away. Logan laughed. "Nah, baby, just a fancy lady with too many boxes." The next morning, Logan stood in front of a townhouse so pristine it looked like it belonged in a movie. He checked the address twice before ringing the bell. Riley was safe at her preschool, and he had exactly 4 hours before pickup. The door opened, and Nora stood there, dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored navy pants, her hair pinned up. She looked nothing like yesterday's flustered woman. "Logan," she said, stepping aside. "Come in." He stepped through the doorway and froze. The place was huge, high ceilings, marble floors, everything looked expensive. He cleared his throat. What do you need fixed?" She led him through the house, pointing out shelves that needed anchoring, a sink that needed tweaking, and a loose window latch. He got to work. Nora stayed close, watching him work, asking questions. Not the annoying kind, just curious. "So, how long have you been on your own with Riley?" she asked as he tightened the shelf brackets. "Since she was 2, her mom left, said she wasn't cut out for it." Nora's expression faltered. "I'm sorry, it's all right. I've got everything I need." She was quiet for a moment. "You really love her." "She's my whole world," Logan said without hesitation. They shared a look then, something quiet and intense, and Nora looked away first. When Logan finished, Nora handed him an envelope. He opened it and blinked. "This is way too much." I pay what the work is worth, she said simply. He stared at the cash. Nora, this is like more than I make in a week. You did a week's worth of work in a few hours, she said with a smile. He shook his head but pocketed the envelope. Thanks. Would you come back tomorrow? There's more to do, he hesitated. Yeah, sure. As he left, Nora watched him go from the window. The truth was, Nora Sullivan wasn't just some woman doing favors for friends. She was the CEO of Sullivan Tech, a billion-dollar software company, and she hadn't fallen for anyone in years. But there was something about Logan, the way he looked at Riley, the way he didn't ask for anything, the way he smiled like he'd already won the world just by having his daughter. She felt something shift the moment he carried those boxes. And for the first time in a long time, Nora Sullivan felt something she couldn't control. She was falling. Logan wiped his hands on a rag as he stepped back from the antique dresser he'd just repaired. The sunlight pouring through the tall windows of the townhouse cast a soft glow over the room's polished hardwood floors and carefully curated decor. It was the third day he'd been working here, each visit revealing more about the house and the woman who owned it. You're surprisingly fast, Nora said, leaning against the doorframe with a mug of coffee in her hand. I thought this would take you all week. I don't like leaving things half done, Logan replied, adjusting the level on the dresser's surface. Besides, I need to keep the hours tight. Riley's preschool isn't open late, Nora tilted her head. Have you ever thought about taking on bigger projects, not just odd jobs, something more stable? Logan shrugged. I don't have the kind of time or resources to chase anything long-term. Every day's about making it to the next. She stepped further into the room and handed him the coffee. This one's black, figured I'd finally get it right. He took it with a quiet chuckle. Thanks. Nora watched him for a moment. I know people who run contracting firms. You've got the skills. He met her eyes, the edges of his expression tightening slightly. Appreciate it, but I've had offers like that before. They usually vanish when they find out I can't work overtime or weekends. I wouldn't make an offer I couldn't back up, she said. I don't throw things at people just to feel better about myself. Logan held her gaze. Why are you helping me? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the window and looked out. Do you ever look at someone and just see something in them, something solid? Like they're steady even when everything else is falling apart. That's not usually how people describe me. Well, maybe they haven't been looking close enough. Logan leaned against the edge of the dresser, coffee warming his palms. You talk like you've been through something. She turned her head slightly, her profile sharp against the light. My father passed 2 years ago. He founded the company I run now. Everyone assumed I'd crumble under the pressure. Some even bet on it. Did you? She inhaled slowly. No. But I almost did. Logan didn't press. The air between them hung heavy with things unsaid, the kind that didn't need to be voiced to be understood. After a moment, she turned back to him with a different energy, as if shaking it off. There's an event tomorrow, charity auction. You should come, he raised an eyebrow. Me, in a room full of tuxedos and champagne, you'd be fine. You've got better posture than half the board members I deal with. Besides, it's casual, I mean sort of. I don't own anything fancy. I'll take care of that, he blinked. You don't have to, I want to. Logan looked at her, uncertain. I can't bring Riley, she'd be bored. But I can arrange a sitter, someone I trust, she'd be safe. He hesitated, the thought of leaving Riley with a stranger tightening his chest. She'll be with my goddaughter's nanny, Nora added. She's certified, experienced, and runs a licensed daycare on the side. Let me think about it, of course. As he packed up his tools a few minutes later, he spotted a photo on the hallway table he hadn't noticed before. It was Nora, younger, smiling beside a tall man in a sharp suit. They stood in front of a sleek building with mirrored windows. Your father, he asked. She nodded as she joined him. That photo was taken the day he handed me the keys to the company. You look proud. I was terrified, she said, her voice softer now, but he never doubted me, not once. Logan studied the photo again. He must have been a good man, he was. Tough but good. They stood in silence for a beat, the quiet stretching between them like a thread neither wanted to cut. I'll call about tomorrow, Logan said finally. Nora nodded. I'll be waiting. That night, Logan sat on the worn couch in his apartment, Riley curled up next to him with her favorite stuffed bunny. Her head rested on his arm, her breathing deep and even. He stared at the envelope Nora had given him that morning. Inside wasn't just payment, it was more than he'd made in the past month combined, folded with a note. "Thank you for not treating me like a job." He didn't know what she meant by that. But as he brushed a strand of hair from Riley's forehead, he realized he hadn't treated her like anything other than a person. No filters, no assumptions. Maybe that was why she looked at him the way she did now. The next afternoon, a driver arrived at Logan's building in a sleek silver sedan, holding a garment bag and an envelope with an invitation enclosed in elegant script. Logan opened the bag and pulled out a tailored charcoal suit, the fabric smooth and expensive under his fingers. Riley stood beside him, eyes wide. "Are you going to a wedding?" he laughed. "No, sweetheart, just a fancy party." "Will there be cake?" "Probably not the kind you like." She crossed her arms. "Then I don't want to go." "You're not," he said, lifting her into his lap. "You'll be with Miss Alina. She's nice, and she has a dog." "A dog?" "Yep, a big fluffy one that likes belly rubs." She considered this. "Okay, but you have to bring me back a cupcake." He kissed her forehead. "Deal?" Later that evening, Logan stepped out of the car in front of a towering glass building, lights twinkling from the upper floors. Inside, the lobby was filled with people in sleek dresses and crisp suits, laughter echoing off marble and glass. He felt like he'd stepped into another world. And then he saw her. Nora stood near the bar, talking to someone in a navy evening gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. When she turned and caught sight of him, her expression lit up with something that wasn't surprise but something warmer. She excused herself and crossed the room. "You clean up well," she said, eyes trailing over him. "You didn't give me much of a choice." "Do you want to leave?" He raised an eyebrow. "We just got here." "Exactly." "Come with me." Without waiting for an answer, she took his hand and led him through a side door, past a quiet hallway, and up a private stairwell. At the top was a rooftop terrace, strung with soft golden lights and lined with low couches and fire pits. The city skyline wrapped around them like a secret. "Why'd you bring me up here?" Logan asked, stepping into the open air. "Because I didn't want to share you tonight," she said. He turned to her, the wind catching a loose strand of her hair. "You're not the person I thought I met that day on the sidewalk." "No," she said, "I'm not." "I don't know what this is," Logan said carefully, "but it's starting to feel like something." "It is," she said. "And I don't want to pretend it isn't." For the first time in years, Logan didn't feel like he was surviving. He felt like he was standing at the edge of something that could change everything. Logan stood at the edge of the rooftop, one hand resting on the iron railing as the city lights pulsed below. Nora was beside him, her voice quiet as she spoke about the first time she'd ever stood on this terrace, how it used to belong to her father's private residence, how she'd once thought it too extravagant for her taste. "I hated it up here when I was younger," she admitted. "Too open, too exposed. I used to think everyone could see straight through me." Logan glanced over. "And now I think maybe that's not such a bad thing." A silence settled between them, not awkward, but weighted with what neither of them had said yet. Logan looked at her, really looked, and saw something unguarded in her expression that hadn't been there before. He had seen a lot of things in his life: loss, disappointment, long nights wondering how to make ends meet. But this was unfamiliar terrain. "I've never been to a place like this," he said finally. "Never even knew people lived like this." "You mean the rooftop or the party?" "Both," he said. "The idea that someone could just walk into a room like that and own it, that's not a world I belong to." She turned to face him. "You didn't look out of place." "I felt it." Nora reached out, brushing her fingers lightly against his. "You don't need to belong to any world, Logan. You make your own." He held her gaze. "You say that like it's easy. It's not, but it's possible." Before he could answer, her phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned slightly. "Alina says Riley asked if you were coming back soon. She's refusing to sleep until you kiss her goodnight." Logan smiled, relief washing over his face at the mention of his daughter. "Guess I should head out." "You don't have to rush." "Alina's got it under control. She's 5. I don't like being away too long." Nora nodded. "I get it." He hesitated before turning. "You ever think about having kids?" She blinked at the question. "I used to, before the company. Before everything got so complicated." What changed? I started thinking I'd mess it up, that I'd be too much like my mother. She left when I was 6, took off and never came back. That gave Logan pause. You ever try to find her? No. My dad used to say if someone walks away that easily, they were never really there to begin with. They stood in silence again, both of them understanding that space between abandonment and survival. I should go, Logan said gently. I'll walk you down. They took the elevator in silence, the hum of it filling the distance between them. When they stepped into the lobby, the driver was already waiting with the car. Nora had arranged everything, of course she had. Before he got in, he turned to her. I don't know what this is. Between us, I don't either, she said, but I want to find out. He nodded once and got into the car. The next morning, Logan woke to the sound of Riley humming in the kitchen. She was dragging a chair across the floor, trying to reach the cereal on the top shelf. Hey, monkey, he said, lifting her up with one arm. Let Daddy help. You were gone a long time, she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. I know, I missed you. Did you have fun? He thought of the rooftop, the skyline, and Nora's fingers brushing his. Yeah, he said softly. I did. Later that afternoon, Logan was fixing a leak in the bathroom sink when his phone buzzed again. It was a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, a woman's voice greeted him. Logan Grant. This is Denise from Sullivan Corporate. Miss Sullivan gave me your name. He sat up straighter. Okay, she mentioned you might be interested in a short-term renovation contract. Would you be available to meet at our office this week? Logan stared at the rusted wrench in his hand. Yeah. I think I could do that. When he arrived at the Sullivan building 2 days later, he stepped into a world of glass and steel. The receptionist guided him to the 22nd floor, where a polished man in a navy suit greeted him with a firm handshake. We've got a few company-owned properties that need attention, the man explained, flipping through a folder. Low priority, but Miss Sullivan wants them handled with care. She said you were the guy. Logan couldn't understand what he was feeling, part disbelief, part suspicion. Nothing in his life had ever fallen into place this easily. I don't have a license, he said. No certifications, the man gestured to the folder. We'll handle the paperwork. She vouched for you. After the meeting, Logan stepped outside and looked up at the towering building. He didn't know what Nora was doing or why she was doing it, but she wasn't handing him a favor, she was giving him a shot. A real one. That night, he knocked on her townhouse door. She opened it, surprised. I didn't expect you. I didn't plan to come, he said. But I needed to say something. Okay. I don't want anything I don't earn, he said. And I don't want to be something you fix. Nora's expression shifted. I'm not trying to fix you, but you're used to control, making things happen. That's not how I live. I know. That's why I like being around you. You don't need a script. He stepped closer. If this is going to be something, it has to be real, not something you keep in a box next to your power suits. She exhaled, something in her posture softening. Then let it be real. He leaned in, resting his forehead lightly against hers. She closed her eyes. I want to see where this goes, he whispered. But I've got Riley. She's not a side note. She's not, Nora said. She's part of the story. I wouldn't want it any other way. And for the first time, Logan believed her. The sharp scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air as Logan stepped into the newly renovated townhouse, a clipboard in one hand and a folded blueprint tucked under his arm. The final property in the Sullivan restoration project was nearly complete, and he'd just signed off on the last inspection. It had been 6 weeks since the rooftop night, 6 weeks of early mornings, dusty boots, and late evenings with Riley curled up beside him on the couch, her hair tangled and her questions endless. Now, standing in the quiet space with the afternoon light sliding through the tall windows, he felt something he hadn't in years: stability. When he heard the familiar knock behind him, he didn't turn right away. He knew it was her. Nora stepped into the empty foyer, trading her usual heels for soft-soled flats and her tailored coats for a simple linen shirt and jeans. She looked around, eyes tracing the crown molding and freshly installed fixtures. Looks different than the last time I saw it, she said. Lighter. You told me to treat it like it was mine, Logan replied, closing the clipboard. So I did. She walked across the room, stopping a few feet from him. I wasn't just talking about the house, you know. He looked at her, then down at the clipboard, then back again. I figured that out. A long silence passed between them, not tense but full. They hadn't spoken in 3 days. Work had taken over and Logan had buried himself in the final details of the project. Nora hadn't pushed, but she was here now and there was no more blueprint left to hide behind. "I want you to come with me to something," she said. "It's not a gala or a benefit, nothing public, just dinner." He cocked his head. "Dinner, with my board, at my place, casual. I've never brought anyone before." Logan raised a brow. "Why now?" "Because they already think I'm too sharp. Too cold, too distant, and I want them to see what I really am." He crossed his arms. "You need me for that. I don't need you. I want you there." He didn't answer right away. Something unreadable passed behind his eyes and Nora stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to perform," she said. "Just be yourself. That's the part that matters." He studied her, then finally gave a slow nod. "All right. When?" "Tomorrow night. I'll need to arrange something for Riley." "Already handled." Elena agreed to bring her to my place. I had a playroom built into the new guest wing. Logan blinked. "You built a playroom?" "I didn't build it," she said. "But I paid for it. It's got all the things she likes, including that weird singing pineapple." He let out a low laugh. "God, that pineapple's cursed." "She loves it," Nora said. "So I bought 2. The next evening, Logan stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nora's penthouse, watching twilight roll across the skyline. He wore a jacket, no tie, and his boots were clean for once. Riley's laughter echoed faintly from the other side of the apartment, where Elena supervised a game involving plastic dinosaurs and glitter glue. The dining table was set for 6. Nora stood at the head, placing a bottle of wine onto the table as the last guest arrived, her CFO. A woman in her 50s with a bone-deep skepticism for anything outside the numbers. Introductions were brief but polite. Nora never once tried to explain who Logan was. She simply introduced him by name and moved on. As the meal began, Logan kept quiet, listening. Talk of revenue forecasts and shareholder sentiment buzzed around him like static. But when the conversation drifted toward the future of the company, Nora's voice shifted. "I want to explore expansion into community-based housing," she said. "I've already begun researching programs that make use of practical trades. Construction, electrical, plumbing, real work with real pay." Her CFO raised an eyebrow. "That's a rather charitable direction." "It's not charity," Nora replied. "It's investment. There's a whole section of this city no one's paying attention to, people with skills, not degrees. People who just need someone to take a risk on them." Logan's eyes met hers across the table, and something in his chest tightened. After dinner, the others left one by one, polite and curious. No one asked who Logan was. No one needed to. Later, while Riley was curled up in the new playroom with a blanket and a glowing nightlight shaped like a cat, Logan walked with Nora to the balcony. The city below shimmered, distant and quiet. "You didn't have to say any of that," he said. "About the expansion, I meant it. You're putting your name on something that might lose you money." "I don't care." He turned to face her. "Why?" "Because I see you," she said. "And I see her. And I want to build a world where people like you don't have to claw for every inch. Where little girls like Riley grow up knowing their dads aren't just surviving, they're thriving." He didn't say anything. His throat felt too tight. "You changed everything," she whispered. "And the worst part is, I didn't even see it happening until it was too late." Logan stepped forward, cupping her face gently. "It's not too late." She closed her eyes as his forehead rested against hers. "I'm falling in love with you." He didn't hesitate. "I already did." Their kiss was quiet, unhurried. There were no fireworks, no sweeping music, just the steady thrum of 2 people finally standing still. The next morning, Logan woke with Riley tucked between him and Nora on the sprawling couch in the sunroom. Nora's arm was draped across her, protective and natural. He'd never seen her like that, barefoot, her hair a little messy, her breathing slow and even. And for the first time since he'd lost everything, Logan felt like he'd found home. Weeks passed. His work with the Sullivan Housing Initiative launched, and he became the field director, managing teams, mentoring hires, building not just homes but futures. He never moved into the penthouse. He and Nora agreed the apartment down the block, where Riley had painted stars on her ceiling, was where they felt real. But they spent most nights together, side by side, equal. One morning, Logan found a small velvet box on the kitchen counter beside his coffee. Inside was a simple silver ring and a note in Nora's handwriting. "If you ask, I'll say yes." He turned to find her in the doorway, barefoot again, wearing one of his old shirts. He dropped to one knee, holding the ring up to her with a grin that reached every corner of him. "Nora Sullivan," he said, "will you marry me?" She didn't wait a second. "Yes," Riley barreled into the room, messy-haired and half asleep. "Are we having cake?" Logan laughed, scooping her up. "Yes, kiddo. We're having cake." And just like that, the girl who once ran $1 billion empire from behind glass walls and the man who once carried heavy boxes for strangers had built something real, not a fairy tale, but something better, a life. The morning of the wedding arrived with skies the color of soft linen and air that carried the scent of gardenias from the Sullivan estate's manicured hedges. Logan adjusted the cuffs of his crisp white shirt in the mirror, the knot of his tie already perfectly done thanks to the quiet help of Nora's cousin, who had arrived early with a bottle of cologne and an extra pair of cufflinks shaped like tiny hammers. Riley bounced on the edge of the bed, her pale pink dress fanned out around her like tulle petals. She clutched a basket of flower petals in one hand and a plush fox in the other. "Are you nervous?" she asked, twisting around to look at him. Logan turned from the mirror. "A little." "Why?" "You already love her." He walked over and scooped her into his arms. "I do, but it's a big day." She wrinkled her nose. "Is that why everyone keeps spraying things in the air and saying timing is everything?" He laughed. "Probably." The ceremony was set in the courtyard behind Nora's childhood home, a sweeping estate tucked against a wooded hillside just outside the city. Rows of white chairs lined the stone path, flanked by climbing roses and soft string music that floated through the breeze. There were no reporters, no press releases. Nora had made it clear. This was a day for family, not headlines. Logan stood beneath an archway draped in linen and wildflowers, his heart pounding not from nerves, but the sheer gravity of what waited beyond the garden wall. He had built entire homes with his hands, raised a daughter with nothing but grit and instinct, but this moment felt like the beginning of something even more permanent. Then, the music shifted. Nora appeared at the garden gate, her dress catching the late morning light like water over silk. There were no diamonds, no tiara, just a satin ribbon at her waist and a veil that brushed her shoulders. She walked alone by choice, her chin high and her eyes fixed only on him. When she reached him, she didn't say anything right away. She simply reached for his hand, their fingers locking together like river stones settling into place. The officiant's voice faded into the background as Logan studied her face, every line, every freckle he hadn't noticed before. She looked at him not like someone stepping into a new life, but like someone who had already chosen it long ago. "You make me feel like I've never had to prove myself," she said when it came time for their vows. "Like I'm enough, just as I am. You never tried to shape me, you just stood beside me." Logan's voice was steady when he replied. "You see parts of me I didn't even know were worth seeing. You gave Riley more than a room in your house, you gave her a place in your heart. I didn't know how much I was missing until I found you." They exchanged rings beneath the soft rustle of trees, and when he kissed her, it wasn't with urgency, it was with the certainty of a man who had found his anchor. The reception spilled into the lawn, a string quartet giving way to soft jazz, and lanterns flickering to life as dusk deepened. Instead of a grand ballroom, they danced beneath the stars, Riley twirling between them with sticky fingers from too much cake. Later, as guests wandered off in pairs and clusters, Logan pulled Nora aside and led her down a stone path through the woods behind the estate. The trees opened into a clearing where a small cottage stood, its porch light glowing. She blinked. "What's this?" "It's ours," he said. "I built it, started a few weeks after you said yes." She turned to him, stunned. "You built a house without telling me." "Not a house," he said. "A retreat. For when we want quiet, when the world gets too loud. It's close enough to the city for work, but far enough to feel like we're somewhere else entirely." She stepped inside, barefoot now, running her hand over the smooth oak banister and glancing at the stone fireplace. The bookshelves were already filled, some with her titles, others with Riley's storybooks. "Does she know?" She picked the paint colors, he said, leaning in. The bedroom has glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Nora turned to him, her eyes shining. You built us a second home. I want you to feel what you gave me, he said, a place where nothing has to be earned. Just lived in. They spent their wedding night there, wrapped in each other, the windows open to the sounds of crickets and the distant hum of the city they had both outgrown in different ways. Weeks later, they returned to their usual rhythm, though everything had shifted. Nora began transitioning leadership of the company to a trusted executive team, scaling back her role to focus on her housing initiative. Logan, now managing a team of foremen and apprentices, spent his days on construction sites with people who reminded him of who he'd once been: tired, overlooked, but still standing. At dinner one evening, Nora sat beside him on the patio while Riley drew chalk hearts on the pavement nearby. I never thought I'd want less control, she mused, but somehow letting go made room for everything I didn't know I needed. Logan took a sip of his iced tea. You don't have to hold everything to build something strong. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You taught me that. They didn't need lavish vacations or red carpets. They had Sunday mornings with pancakes, Wednesday night movie marathons, and spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen when Riley insisted the toaster was playing music. One spring morning, Nora stood in the bathroom, staring at a small white stick in her hand. Logan found her there, quiet and still, her other hand resting unconsciously on her flat stomach. She looked up at him, startled. I didn't plan this. He stepped forward, pulled her close, and whispered against her temple. Neither did I, and look how that turned out. When they told Riley, she squealed and immediately demanded to name the baby Sparkle if it was a girl and Captain Nacho if it was a boy. Life became louder, messier, more beautiful. And through it all, every spilled glass of juice, every late-night diaper change, every board meeting and construction delay, they stayed side by side. Not because they had to, but because they had built something stronger than plans. They had built love, and this time it was permanent,